We begin with our top story. The second official meeting of more than 30 Caribbean and Latin America countries has ended. But before leaving Havana, leaders sketched out their plans for the future. First, the CELAC countries promised not to interfere with each other's political and economic affairs. There were also frequent pledges to fight poverty and to build a stronger economic bloc. In his address to the summit, Cuban President Raul Castro called on members to take complete control over their natural resources. He also called on the group to develop strong foreign investment policies. Nathan King has been in Cuba covering the summit. He joins us now live on what's next for the Caribbean and Latin America bloc. Nathan?
Yeah, Phil, we entered the summit with a Havana declaration, a long list of wish list, if you like, of what this relatively new grouping will do. Top of it is making this CELAC the zone of peace, no more wars. That's going to be a hard thing in a continent that's been racked with civil wars and has many military bases. But focusing on the economic front, it's very interesting. They all talked about harnessing natural resources for the 600 million people within CELAC, despite the fact they have very different governmental systems, both right, left, socialist and free market. But really the focus has been all about Cuba this week. Havana hasn't hosted something like this ever, really. And a lot of people here have been able to focus on the small amount of reforms that Cuba has implemented. You know, I was here 10 years ago, and it's a vastly different country. So we thought we'd take you onto the streets of Havana to give you a flavor about what's changed.
Esa negra linda,
10 years after my first visit to Havana, and some things remain the same. Music, cigars, and the cars. But there are some obvious changes on the streets of downtown Havana. For a start, the streets are a lot cleaner, and there are also a lot more tourists coming in from around the world. And also across this historic area, you see signs like these. Increasingly, Cubans are allowed to buy property and also rent out rooms in their apartments to each other and foreign tourists. Another thing I've noticed after 10 years coming back to Cuba is the proliferation of markets like these, outside of state control, better quality produce, but higher prices. And that is leading to fears that as this economy opens up, many Cubans won't be able to afford enough to eat. Over the past 50 years, the Cuban government have covered up to 80% of a family's food costs, but the state just can't afford it anymore. They're also laying off 1 million state-employed workers over the next few years. The reforms are being welcomed, but there's going to be many hardships for many families used to relying on the state. And in this 19th century apartment, art court, barber shop, they are thriving. Entrepreneurship is alive in Havana. You just have to look for it. And while wonderful little private businesses like this do create jobs, they're just a handful at a time, here 2 or 3. So it's going to be a difficult transition as Cuba moves from a solely state economy to a semi-private one.
Nathan, it's amazing. You're literally watching the transformation of a country. It's the second time that they've had this conference. Is there a sense, perhaps, that there's a new voice for the region because of that?
Yeah, I think there's 2 factors here, Phil. You're absolutely right. This whole interdependence of this region without the dominance or reverence, if you like, to Washington anymore. There is a feeling that despite differences on the continent, that there is a common destiny, although it's going to be very hard to get there. And, you know, it's going to be judged both in the way they deal with the outside world. For example, CELAC is very much now the interlocutor with the European Union. China announced they're going to set up a forum doing the same thing. Ban Ki-moon, the UN Secretary General, wanted to do that. But also I think they're going to be judged by the 600 million people that represent these 33 nations. And this war on poverty is in a way a high stakes pitch, because poverty in this area can sometimes reach 25 to 26% of the populations within CELAC. That is very, very high indeed. And so they're going to be really counted not by the words that they've said here in Havana this week, but by the actions following this summit.
Nathan King, Havana, Cuba, thank you very much.